Hey, Dad, did you know that the environment you raise your children in directly impacts the way their genetic code activates as they grow? Did you know that environmental factors are one of the primary contributors to the mental and spiritual health of your children? Did you know that many statistics support that fatherhood is one of the most stabilizing forces in a person's life when it is done by healthy fathers? Welcome to episode 9 of Sit with Stitt, podcast where we take on controversial, taboo, or otherwise important topics and contend with them for the internet. A week from today, my small business, East Tennessee Mentorship Association, is launching our first ever group that is specifically for Christian fathers. It's very important to me in the business that we remain neutral and accessible to anyone. However, that does not mean that we will not cater to specific groups of people. We have men's groups, women's groups, sexual assault support groups. We have a spiritual deep dive group, and now we have a group for Christian fathers. If you're a father who's not a Christian and would like to have a group, reach out and we'll try to put something together, assuming that we can get, all we need is 4 people, so 3 other fathers who want to kind of look at fatherhood from a particular angle or approach. My daughter asked me over the weekend what the word sacred means, and I said, that's a good question. Where did you hear that word? And she said, I hear it from you all the time. In my life, everything is sacred because I believe that we should do everything as if it's an act of worship to God. I also make it a habit to discuss sacred topics in groups because I believe that's what we would have done as tribal people, and I believe that for most of human history we have had tribe in some fashion, and now Facebook exists, and so a lot of our communication happens on there instead, which is less sacred of a style of communication. The first thing that came to mind when my daughter asked me what the word sacred means is fatherhood. Because when something is sacred, when an activity is sacred, it means that you do that from a place of vulnerability. I've discussed fatherhood one time in a group, and it was with a group comprised entirely of fathers. That was a difficult topic for me because fatherhood is not as simple a journey as some people would like to pretend that it is. Mine started off with a bang. I remember finding out that my now ex-wife was pregnant. I was at a family men's camping trip, and I was, my daughter's almost 9. Should be 9 in November. So I suppose I was 24, and I sat down immediately. I couldn't stand up. Got the call, got the news, sat down. Everyone's looking at me like, what's wrong? We don't usually talk on the phone here, but you answered the phone and now you're sitting down and you've gone a little pale. And I said, I'm going to be a dad. That's a rite of passage into manhood, right? And then I got real philosophical for a little while, and I thought about all the things I wouldn't do. I'd never drink a beer in front of my kid. I'd never say a cuss word in front of my kid. I'd never yell at her. I'd never hurt her. I'd be a good dad and a balanced dad. And then, when she was 3 years old, I decided to divorce her mother. And I heard her, I heard her. There's so much in fatherhood. I mean, even when she was born, I was stationed in Hawaii. I was at Trickler Army Medical Hospital, which does not have the best reputation among service folks. And both my ex-wife and my daughter almost died in that room. I mean, there was a 28-hour delivery. There was surgery involved. There was So I don't know. I remember all kind of crazy stuff. Bunch of nurses rushing in saying "Turber," and they stabbed my ex with this thing, and she's like on another planet, and I'm just sitting here watching all this stuff. Been on a couple deployments, and I think that I'm a resilient human, and now I'm stationed on this island alone with no family, and my wife and soon-to-be daughter are dying in front of my eyes. So that was an educational experience to launch my journey into fatherhood, which was followed by numerous other educational experiences. But the thing is, fatherhood is so sacred that when we know we're hurting our children, we can't stomach it, so we look away. When my daughter moved out of my house during my divorce, that's the one and only time I recall in my life, at least as a grown adult, curling into a fetal position and breaking and crying. It was so hard to detach from someone who had been a daily part of my life and such an angel and such a light. And then because of my own decisions in the marriage, I wasn't going to be around her all the time. And so what do humans do in these circumstances? You go from being very, very attached, but now you can't be attached. And so as a man, and all of my insecurity and self-guilt and self-shame, I continued the other way and detached too much. And for a long time, I didn't even call her every day on the phone, just because I was punishing myself for hurting her. Once I became aware of that, I fixed it, you know? It's not fun to get called out on your crap, but in this case, it was my ex-wife who sat down and said, hey, there's some real issues here, and she showed me this document that my kid had written that said, I don't want to go to daddy's house. Well, why wouldn't you want to come to daddy's house? Because daddy was detached. Daddy was closed off. Daddy was trying. Daddy was showing up for her in every way I knew how, you know? When she came over, everything stopped and it was all about her, and we went on adventures and we went and visited grandparents and we had conversations. But I was too detached and she knew it. We have to be willing to look in the mirror and see the things we are doing that influence our children's environment, and that will have ramifications in their mental and spiritual health. I, too, have a 2-year-old son now. Whew. Having a son, for me at least, there's been so many times I've been considering stopping this video and starting over, but I think it's good this way. It's how a conversation should happen. It must happen. Having a son for me was, it was like forced inner child work. You can't, at least in my experience, you can't have children without thinking about your fathers. On one side, my biological father has kind of struggled with alcoholism, and it's impacted our relationship. I don't blame him or take issue with that. He's, in fact, as far as I know, sober now. That's not his fault. I mean, it's his responsibility, but it's not his fault, right? Like, whatever our parents' circumstances are, I'm not just talking about my parents, whatever our collective parents' circumstances are, they are the way they are for reasons too. My grandfather was an alcoholic. There are only so many ways to deal with these things. And one of them is the way that my father dealt with it. I don't blame him. I don't hate him or feel anger toward him. My stepfather was responsible for feeding 6 children. And so he worked 3 jobs at a time, sometimes towns away. He didn't get much time with us, let alone much time to himself. And so here I am as a person who takes my personal balance so seriously, who does my best to show up in a centered space for my family. But that requires me to have time by myself, time in the forest, time fishing. And I have one child with me 100% of the time, and then a second on a part-time basis, I'm not trying to feed 6 kids. So, lifestyle, environment, it has implications that interplay with your children's genetic predisposition. In my instance, I had a genetic predisposition for depression and perhaps for suicidal ideation and for mental illness. And so some firm discipline that might have affected one child a different way affected me the way it affected me, right? And it's the same for my kids. And the way we know how things will impact our kids is by spending time with them. So as I'm raising this beautiful little son, it's been very much forced inner child work on my part. When something is sacred to you, it gives it a unique capacity to trigger you. For instance, well, I'm just always aware of when I make something holy, because if that holy thing is broken, then it hurts, it wounds you, you know? So like, for instance, I don't think this is going to happen, but like there's a pastor that at the church that I'm going to that I really respect. If he just did a full 180, mask off, hey, guess what? It's me, the scariest, most corrupted pastor you've ever seen, and I've just been up here a wolf in sheep clothing leading people the wrong way, and now my mask is off. Like, because I respect my pastor so much, I'm aware that that would wound me. And so in advance, I'm processing in the back of my brain, hey, if that happens, he's just a man. It doesn't affect, I mean, he's not just a man, he's a brother, he's someone that I love. But like, if he were to end up being a corrupted clergy person, that I have to process in advance not to let that affect my walk or whatever, you know? So with my kids, it's the same. Because fatherhood is so holy, and because I'm so dedicated to not hurting my children, when I do hurt them, it triggers me. And when I'm triggered, that's the easiest time to hurt my children, right? That's how it works. That's how universal law works. One of my triggers, one of my few remaining triggers, in fact, I've worked through a whole bunch of them and I'm proud of that work. But one of my triggers is being yelled at. When you have 6 kids, you have to have a certain structure or everything would be mayhem. So quite often the house was pretty strict. And not only that, but I've been yelled at by all sorts of people, not just parental figures, but just, you know, in the service, when my dad was drunk. I mean, you just get yelled at, and I don't like getting yelled at. So my 2-year-old sees that and shrieks in my face as a divine test from God. And now that I'm a father in my 30s instead of a father in my 20s, I handle it a lot differently. I handle it by increasing the amount of love I'm pouring into my son. Most of the time. Every now and then I still, you know, hey, don't yell at my wife. If you yell at me again, your butt's going in timeout. I'm not saying that discipline is inappropriate, but I do think that it's important for fathers to be aware that fatherhood will expose your triggers and that it's your job, not your children's job, to navigate those triggers. So fatherhood is this whole topic, right? And it's like any other relational topic. When we know we're doing it well, we can be at peace with ourselves. And when we know that there are things we're neglecting in our role as a father, we become insecure about them, we suppress and avoid them, and when someone brings them up, we blow up in their face and say, do you know how hard I've been working, or do you know this, or do you not see this, or how about some validation or confirmation or affection or whatever? Are you taking a shortcut? Are you taking a shortcut as a father? Is there more that you should be doing that you aren't doing? In my past, when I felt sort of sensitive or touchy about it, I mean, I talked about this in a men's group. We were talking about insecurity, and I said I'm insecure because I feel like I'm at work too much, and I should be home with my kids more. But I have to be at work a lot to get this business off the ground. both of those are true. So I just went home and fixed it. And when you fix it, you don't have to feel insecure about it. And when you fix it, you're better positioned to negotiate for yourself and your needs as a man. In many ways, I feel that I've been all over the place in this video, but that is what fatherhood is for me. It is sacred and it is separate. And so sitting in a room of men to talk about fatherhood, you can't talk about fatherhood without talking about your past, your relationship with your parents, the things in your life that have affected you and molded you as a man. You can't talk about fatherhood without talking about partnership. You can't talk about fatherhood without talking about what you believe in and what ideas you're accountable to and the standards of character that you hold yourselves to. And you can't talk about it without talking about how beautiful your children are and the ways that they have impacted you and taught you. It's going to be a powerful group, man. The thing is that so often we think that fatherhood means being invulnerable and being perfect. And what fatherhood really means is being vulnerable and imperfect. That's how you do it right. And that's how you raise your kids without scarring them. And that's why, even though the group is very scary for me, I'm going to do it because I know that it's necessary. So, if you're a parent and you're watching this week's episode, I'd really encourage you to look into some just introductory psychology about how to parent. Even just, oh, there's a beautiful crow in the parking lot out there. I'm not very surprised. Might be Heimdall, my friend Heimdall. Anyway, even if you just look at the fact that there is permissive, authoritarian, authoritative, and neglectful parenting. You don't want to be permissive or neglectful. You already know that. And you don't want to be authoritarian because that's where you're militant and your kids have no personality or individuality. You want to be authoritative. You want to set the boundaries for them and teach them what is good and right and what is the way and what is safe and what is not safe. I could probably talk about this forever. I probably should write a book about parenting at some point because it's such a journey. But if you have had even moments of true connection with your children, then you know that it's a journey worth completing and that it heals you at the same time it heals them. It educates you at the same time it educates them. And in many ways, our children probably have a lot of things more right than we do. They're curious and they still experience wonder. They still pursue God and ask Him questions. And they know how to love without having their guard up. May we also learn to love them without having our guard up. Bit of a ramble, but a cup of joe with y'all this morning and a brief discussion on fatherhood. We still have 2 slots left in the group that begins on Monday the 4th. It's next week. I'm pretty sure it's the 4th, and that group will start between 6 and 6:30 based on the members we get that we put in, that we plug into it. So that's all I've got for this week. Next week's topic will be Coach Melissa, who is she's a certified aromatherapist, an emotion and body code expert, and my coach that I've been working with for 2 or 3 months, and I've had numerous breakthroughs, and I'm so thankful for her investment. So please do come back and listen to that, and let us prepare for the fall and winter where we are meant to draw away and think about matters of substance like fatherhood and healing and communication and relationships. Thanks for bearing with me. I think I'm usually more articulate, but fatherhood, man. Fatherhood's sacred, right? See y'all next week. Thank you.